tuned in to the Andrew Lawton Show.
This has been a tremendously vicious election. The narrative surrounding Donald Trump, and again, I'm not having this discussion in a way that pretends that I can vote for him. I'm a Canadian. I'm an interceptor of American politics right now, or an interloper, I guess. But this does matter, and this is meaningful, and we're seeing a lot of that same hatred and anger and venom and uncivility on both sides of the border. Michele Bachmann is a former Republican presidential candidate herself, sought the party nomination in 2012 and served for many years in Congress as a Republican representative. And she returns to the show now. Michele, thank you so much for coming on. Good to speak to you again.
Andrew, good to see you today too.
You have seen, I mean, you've met Donald Trump and you know him quite well, and you obviously know American politics quite well, and you know the symbolism of it. So when you see that famous photo that we put up there, the one that's just made its way around the world, is that the Donald Trump that you know? Is that an image that surprises you given what happened and how you'd expect him to respond?
Yes, it is. The genius of Donald Trump, if people aren't aware of that, what is unique about this man is the fact that he doesn't see any obstacle. If there's an obstacle in his path, he goes around, he goes underneath, he goes over, he figures a way to get to what it is that he wants to do, especially in this election cycle. You've never seen more curveballs thrown at any candidate than what's been thrown at Donald Trump, including this. So his gut instincts are amazing. His gut instinct to immediately go straight down was an excellent move. But then also his gut instinct was to stand up and communicate to America. Because if you want to understand Donald Trump, he's a John Wayne American. If people remember back to John Wayne movies, that's really the kind of guy that Donald Trump is. Very optimistic, loves the country, believes that our country can do anything if we put our mind to it. He's a very decent man, and he wants a very decent country, and he's a continual fighter. So it was what we saw when he was shouting. He was angry, but he was angry at what was happening. And when he shouted, "Fight, fight, fight," that was from his heart. And I read an article this morning. He was responding to people over the weekend after he'd been seen by the doctors at the hospital in Pennsylvania, that he wanted to stay. He wanted to stay, and he wanted to speak to the audience. That's very indicative of who Donald Trump is. He has dragon energy like nobody I've ever seen. He has incredible stamina, incredible energy. He's older than I am, but his body is a lot younger than mine. He's just a very impressive individual.
Political violence in the United States is not, I would say it's not even all that rare. And it's been directed against politicians on the left and the right. You've Gabby Giffords, you have Steve Scalise, you have Ronald Reagan, you have all of this, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, this is a longstanding part of American politics, sadly. And I'm wondering whether this was outside of that, whether this was something unique. And what I mean by that is that the temperature in politics has seemed a lot higher in the last 8 years than it has been, even in that. I mean, the context of Reagan and the attempted assassination against him was a heck of a lot different than this attempt on Donald Trump's life.
No, I think you're right about that. And that's because what we've been seeing in the United States is a coup of our culture, a coup, a takeover, if you will, of our public schools, of our culture, of our corporate culture in the United States. And so we've gone from traditional America, thinking of loving our country, loving what our country stands for, loving the ability of people being able to start their own businesses and keep the money that they make, and people all being held to the same standard under the law, enforcement of the law. That way of life has been completely upended in the last probably 10 years. It's been upended. And we live in a country in America that we no longer recognize. Part of that is the political revolution that we see primarily coming through one particular party. That's the Democrat Party in the United States. And it seems that they've embraced a revolutionary attitude toward politics, where it's winner take all, that we can never lose an election, that everything is about holding on to the power base. It's very unusual from politics typically in the United States. And it's moving the United States toward a direction, like I said, that we no longer recognize. The open borders, for instance, and the out of control spending that we've never seen before. Really, it's like the United States is in a car going 80 miles an hour heading directly at a brick wall, and there's no brakes. That's really what's been happening in our country. People are reacting to that. They want America back, the happy America that we all knew before, the achieving America where we're not ashamed of what our country is. And so I think that thinking, that coup thinking, has got us into the trouble. And there's too many oddballs that have been calling actually for violence, including the president of the United States, Joe Biden, on Monday called for putting Trump in a bullseye. That's a significant statement. And it isn't just that. In the last 2 weeks, since the United States Supreme Court issued its decision on the immunity ruling for the presidents, there's been daily calls for the assassination of the president of the United States. If you read American press, it's daily calls for assassination, including the famous actress Bette Midler. She had made calls for, in fact, over the weekend, Jack Black, who has a rock band in Australia, one of his bandmates shouted out from the stage, "You better have better aim next time." And one of the staffers for the Democrat member of Congress who ran the January 6th committee, his staffer said, "Hey, why didn't you get shooting lessons?" So, I mean, these kind of comments are still going out after the attempt on the president's life. And I'm sure your listeners are well aware that President Trump literally was a fraction of a second away from death. This was meant to be a kill shot. And he looked to his right. He looked over his right shoulder at a chart regarding the numbers on illegal aliens coming into the United States. Only because he turned his head did the shot just take off a part of his ear instead of going into his brain. It was meant for his brain. It was meant to take him out. So this was a death shot. But probably the thing that everyone is talking about today, Andrew, is the fact that this was the most colossal fail from our Secret Service.
Yes.
I've had Secret Service protection when I ran for president of the United States in 2012. I had President George W. Bush do fundraisers for me. I saw what that practice was like on the inside. And I'm telling you, there is literally no way security would miss the most obvious site on that whole campus to shoot from. It was very close, about 130 yards away, and it wasn't covered or protected at all. And for 3 minutes, people were getting the attention of Secret Service to tell them.
Oh, we lost Michele for a moment. We'll hopefully get Michele back in a second here. But Sean, if you could, while we get Congressman Bachmann back on, if you could put that map back up there. This is incredibly important, and it's a little bit small, but I wanted to have a very wide image. So in the middle of the screen at the top, you see 3 buildings beside each other. And just below those, in front of those, is a photo of Donald Trump. That's where the Trump stage was set up. That's where the stage was set up. To the left of that, the red dot, that is where the sniper was. If you were to have no idea how to orchestrate a presidential assassination, and you were to know that Trump was going to be speaking in that spot, and you were going to look at this whole area, what is the most logical building that you would get onto? It's the closest one. It is literally the closest building to the stage, except for the 3 immediately behind the stage. And that is so incredibly important here, because how could you not look at that building? How could you not have someone standing on that building? How could you not have your own snipers on that building looking to the right of the stage? They had snipers behind the stage on those 3 building tops, but they did not have them, apparently, on the one that the sniper who took out or attempted to take out Donald Trump did, and who took out a beloved Pennsylvania fire chief who was in the bleachers behind Donald Trump. Like, this was absolutely a security failing. And I'm always the one telling people to not get conspiratorial. I'm always the one telling people, no, don't start going down this road of thinking that everything is a conspiracy. But I will be perfectly candid in saying that I have a lot of questions about this. I think it's entirely possible that this was a lone wolf gunman, a mentally unhinged gunman, a guy consumed by political hatred, consumed by something else. It's possible that that was the case, but how does a 20-year-old kid manage to exploit a security vulnerability of this nature without presumably knowing what he's doing? And more importantly, why is that security vulnerability there in the first place? Why is that security vulnerability there? Why does it exist? And that is a question that will take, I suspect, a great deal of time to answer. We have Michele Bachmann back, and I just want to spend just another moment with her here. Thank you for coming back, Michele. What is your read on this? Is your read that this couldn't just be basic government incompetence?
Well, that's always a factor, basic government incompetence. But I think people are worried that this may be more sinister, because clearly there are advanced men that do all of the work. Then this was the number one location that you would shoot from. It was the direct line of sight. It would offer the best kill shot. And so it's impossible to believe that it wasn't covered. But the other thing is, you had snipers who were looking directly at that area, who had the gun on him. And there's a report today that the fellow who had the gun on the shooter had it sighted on him for 3 minutes, that he had asked for permission to take this fellow out, and he wasn't given permission. Now, that hasn't been verified, but that's been all over the place. And again, it wasn't just one person who saw the shooter up there. There were a lot of people that saw the shooter. They were pointing at the shooter. They had the attention of the Secret Service. They had the attention of the local police, and a local policeman had time to put a ladder. He had the time to put the ladder up against the building and climb up. And then the shooter pointed his gun at the local policeman. He ducked and he went down. So had the local policeman stayed there, pulled his gun out, or maybe he would have been killed himself. Clearly at that point, I think the snipers would have taken out the shooter and they wouldn't have shot at President Trump. But be that as it may, I mean, when you think about this 50-year-old fireman who was killed, he was in the bleachers behind President Trump, and 2 other people were severely injured as well. So this is as big as it gets, this assassination attempt against the president. And so it isn't that there's no equivalency here about the rhetoric. Rhetoric is strong on both political parties, Republican, Democrat, but the calls for assassination, the calls for violence have almost been exclusively coming from the Democrat Party. They need to own that. They need to apologize for it. They need to renounce that. And then at this point, I think there's a lot of reluctance to really trust the Secret Service or trust the FBI at this point. They're the ones conducting the investigation. And as of this morning, they're telling the world that they aren't able to open the cell phone of the 20-year-old. Who believes that they don't have the ability to open up that cell phone? So there are so many things that don't add up right now. And so a lot will unfold.
Michele Bachmann, thank you so much for coming on today. I know it's a busy week in your country, so I appreciate your insights and time very much.
Thanks again, Andrew. Good to see you again.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.